Hi everyone, my name is Emily Hashimoto Roth, and I was the chair for the inaugural online interactive panel, co-hosted by HUPO's Early Career Researcher Initiative and the European Proteomics Association's Young Proteomics Investigators Club. Due to some technical difficulties, I'm re-recording our opening words and the introduction of one of our panelists. This panel was the start of what we hope to be a new space for members of the global proteomics community to share and discuss their ideas on a variety of topics. Our inaugural panel focused on the promotion of diversity in proteomics, and we were joined by three phenomenal panelists, Dr. Yujie Chen, Dr. Renee A.S. Robinson, and Dr. Robert Rivers. Dr. Chen, who was recently elected as president-elect for the Taiwan Chemistry Society, the first female elect in 90 years, obtained her PhD degree from Iowa State University. After postdoctoral research work at the National Tsinghua University, Dr. Chen joined the Institute of Chemistry of Academia Sinica. Her research focuses on methodology development for membrane proteomics and protein post-translational modification, integrating novel nanomaterial, advanced mass spectrometry and bioinformatics, and has application in cancer and stem cell biology. She has received several domestic and international awards, including the Outstanding Young Investigator Award from the Chinese Chemical Society, the Distinguished Young Chemist Award from the Federation of Asian Chemical Societies, the Mr. Wu Taiyu Memorial Award from the National Science Council, the Research Award for Junior Research Investigators from Academia Sinica, the Outstanding Scholar of Taiwan Society for Mass Spectrometry, and the Outstanding Young Scholar from the Shu Mu Foundation of Chemistry. She is also the current president of HUPO. Unfortunately, a short portion of the beginning of Dr. Chen's presentation was cut off, but we will now hear about her personal experiences related to diversity.
So after looking at this literature, I start to look at my own experience. When I was younger, I never see this is an issue, but when I look back, it's actually a very interesting experience and a journey. And I was born in Asia, and you probably know that this is more a kind of male-dominated society. So the society put a major responsibility for family in the female's shoulder. And when I was pregnant in the third year of my PhD, I was shocked, I was surprised and kind of scared. I'm not sure whether I can afford to have a baby in that turning point. And then after I finished my postdoc, my son is already 3 years old, and my family's woman never work. So, well, at that time, I thought, do I need to work? Can I work? That's kind of struggling condition for many female in my society. And then after I got a job in academic Sinica, that started a struggling process. I always wonder within the limited time frame, do I perform well to publish good paper? Do I have sufficient time for my family to raise my kids? So I think this is a very typical scenario faced by many females in Asia region. And in 2013, I was appointed as the first director in the Institute of Chemistry. Again, I'm the very first one. So many interesting things happen. Sometimes I was mistaken as a secretary. People may ask me, "Oh, is your director here? Can you tell your director I'm looking for him?" Well, this is interesting because people do not expect the director of my institute will be female. And sometimes you get some kind of comment, she must be very tough, aggressive. Well, I guess I'm tough, but I'm a nice person. And later, when I was elected as the first president-elect in the past 90 years for the Chemical Society in Taiwan, I think that is really a shocking event. I think I realized my society is trying to promote the diversity, including genders. This is actually a good sign. But I start to wonder whether I'm good enough. Am I qualified enough to get the position? Or did I get this position just because of my gender? So I think these are all the questions that happened or I experienced in the journey of my society. But I'm so happy to see that HUPO is doing a great job and work hard to promote the diversity. Just last year, we come up with a diversity statement. This is a very nice draft provided by our Vice President, Sue. And you could see from this diversity statement, we think it's important to create an inclusive environment to promote the diversity in race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, gender expression, gender identity, age, etc. So I think this is something we really hope to do together. So I also welcome any comment, suggestion, and action plan following the webinar here. And that I think that statement is just the beginning. We actually started to do something critically to promote the diversity. And this is just a list I want to show you. For example, every year when we organize the HUPO Congress, we want to make sure that we have sufficient balance or good balance in terms of the gender or speaker from different region. And this is the statistics from this year. We have 10 plenary speakers this year, and among the 10, 40% are female. 40% are from the Asia Oceania region, which is usually the underrepresented region in HUPO. And in our EC, we also want to make sure we have the balance in terms of gender, age, etc. And a few years ago, we have the so-called diversity candidate for council member. And this is a special position we want to protect or want to recruit the minority from our society. And ECR, I think you did a great job. And I also try to recruit more, suggest more young researchers from our region. So just 2 days ago, we already know that there will be 2 candidates of the ECR members from Asia, and I will pass the information to ECR. And finally, I also want to point out that the diversity is not just the composition of the human beings. I think the research also needs diversity. We do not want everybody do the same topic. I think we want to encourage that you can try to explore the less noticed or less noticed field in the research, including proteomics. So we hope that this is the future goals and the directions that everybody will work together for the future. And finally, I will welcome any question and comment for the audience. And well, this is a promotion. I think this is a very nice website. And for many young students, you are welcome to explore very nice slide from the SlideSgo. I also use this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yuju. I'm a big fan of SlideSgo as well. So a second push for that for anyone that's looking to make some very nice slides. Thank you for that first talk. It was great. I think you touched on multiple really important points, especially one towards the end about not just diversity in the researchers carrying out the work, but also in the experiments being done on the demographics themselves. With that, I am very excited to move on to our second speaker, Dr. Renee A.S. Robinson. So Dr. Robinson completed her Bachelor in Science in Chemistry at the University of Louisville and received her PhD in Analytical Chemistry from Indiana University, Bloomington. While she was still a PhD student, she pioneered work that combined techniques for ion mobility spectrometry and time-of-flight mass spectrometry to identify proteins in fruit flies and study aging. Dr. Robinson then received 2 postdoctoral fellowships, the Lyman T. Johnson Fellowship and the UNCF Merck Postdoctoral Fellowship at the University of Kentucky. From 2009 to 2017, Dr. Robinson was an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry at the University of Pittsburgh and a faculty member of the Biomedical Mass Spectrometry Center at the University of Pittsburgh's School of Medicine and the University of Pittsburgh's Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. At the end of 2017, she joined Vanderbilt University, where she now leads the RASR laboratory as an associate professor of chemistry in the Department of Chemistry, Department of Neurology, and a faculty member of the Department of Chemical Biology and the Vanderbilt Memory and Alzheimer's Center. She's also the president-elect for the National Organization of the Professional Advancement of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers.
Thank you for that introduction, Emily, and for the invitation to be here. And I think if we just stop with everything that Dr. Chen just said, we could have a whole conversation on just those topics alone. However, I just wanted to share that I've had like a number of personal lived experiences with diversity, equity, inclusion, and the lack thereof. And these experiences started even as early as elementary school. And my mom always reminds me of something that occurred when I was in about the third grade. And so I was sent to a different elementary school outside of my primary neighborhood, which was really comprised of individuals that looked like me. And when I went to a different school that had a majority white population, I started to notice that there were clear differences just in the materials that I had access to. So differences in the books that we had, differences in the types of things that we learned in the classroom and how we did those things compared to my neighborhood school. And so even as early as a young individual, I recognize that there are so many different disparities that occur, especially in our educational system. And this has been echoed throughout my entire educational journey, even throughout my graduate career and even now in academia. And so what I think is necessary is just a realization that change takes a while, and these things don't happen overnight. And it's especially important to make sure that we just recognize that there's a lot of work that has to be put in order to make things better for the next generation. What motivated me to even pursue a career in academia was taking a moment to reflect on my own journeys as a graduate student in STEM. I'm a Black African American female. I'm also a mother. And when I look back over my journey, there was a lack of role models and individuals who are representative of myself and my community in these roles. And I started to become very frustrated with recognizing that I was one of very few, sometimes the only one, that was in certain environments, especially being in the field that we're in, proteomics, mass spectrometry, and chemistry. There were just times where I was like the only one, literally. And over the course of that reflection, that really started to bother me. And I realized that if it bothered me, it probably bothered other individuals who felt like they were the only one of whatever you can fill in the blank with. And so that was my primary motivation for pursuing a career in academia. And that was to be in a position to help create opportunities for underserved individuals to have an opportunity to do what we do. And through this journey, I've learned that, diversity is really just a humane thing to do. It's the right thing to do, and there's so many reasons that people can demonstrate that it's important and beneficial for research in our team environments, but really everyone just deserves to be at the table. I think one of the things that's been really eye-opening to me has been how much we have to think about diversity. Dr. Chen brought up thinking about diversity in research, which is absolutely critical. The things that motivate me as a scientist may not motivate the next scientist. And so we have to think about what are we doing with the research, and are we being inclusive in the types of research we do? When we think about training and who we're training, what are we doing in that space to make sure that it's equitable and we have diverse types of trainees in all of the ways that were just brought up on the slide of HUPO's mission statement? I think the other thing that we have to think about is pedagogy, and how do we teach these hard disciplines, and how do we bring people into our fields? And are we doing it from a lens that is not representative of the diversity of how people can come into our fields? And so I think this is just a really deep conversation, and I'm excited to be here today to help to contribute to a start of this conversation in HUPO. And I think I will stop with that.
Thank you so much for that introductory talk. Again, so many truly important points to hit on. Particularly, one that stood out to me was pedagogy. As someone, the first in my family following graduate studies or higher education in science, particularly research, can definitely understand that as well. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our third speaker, Dr. Robert Rivers, who is actually also one of the members of the HUPO ECR initiative. So Dr. Rivers is a program director in the Office of Minority Health Research and Coordination at the National Institute of Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Diseases. This is one of the institutes that comprises the United States National Institutes of Health, or the NIH. biomedical research workforce and expanding the NIDDK's portfolio in health disparities related research. His doctoral research focused on the study of intrinsically disordered proteins, their propensity to aggregate, and their implications in disease. He earned a PhD degree in chemistry at the University of Cambridge and a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Kentucky State University.
Thank you so much, Emily, for the introduction. And indeed, after hearing Dr. Chen and Dr. Robinson's talks, I don't know if I have much more to say. I almost feel like it's time for us to get into the full discussion. Because when we think about issues of diversity, it's not only one's ethnicity or the content of melanin someone has, but it's the lived experiences, what people grew up around. Also, and we're thinking in the terms of academics and in proteomics, what's someone's scientific background? Is someone primarily doing RNA-seq, or are they more of a top-down proteomics person? So when we bring more people to the tables, our vantage point of what we're doing in science and in society improves. I do have two quick slides. Since I work for the National Institutes of Health, I always think it's important when we have these conversations around diversity and what we're doing, that there's data that supports what we say or what we're not saying. And so I'm going to share two bits of data on slides, and it just goes to the lack of diversity within the United States of America we have currently in funding research. And as always, when I show data, I like to, this is publicly available. Nothing here is super private or classified NIH information. This is all publicly available. But if we think about how diverse the United States truly is, and if we think about really the world, the diversity in the world, unfortunately, look at what we're funding. The vast majority of applications and the vast majority of grants are going to individuals that are European descendants or classified as white individuals, 66.2% of all grant applications. Is that really a great reflection of all the talent and ideas and insight of a nation of over 330 million people? I would argue and say no. When there's less than 0.2% of research grants towards Native Americans, the original inhabitants of this land. And so it's not just what we're funding. Like, I'm not talking just about what the money goes out the door, but also if we look at the place where I work, the NIH workforce. And once again, we're not doing good enough. So even if we take a 30,000-foot view away from proteomics, how can we ensure that our science, our health research, and things that are often funded by taxpayers in countries and citizens reflect the citizenry of those places? And right now, I think in the world and in the United States and all over, as a result of COVID-19, there's increased reflections as we've all been mostly stuck in our houses watching TV and seeing the news from around the world. And by seeing that news, there's this shared humanity that we realize we are all affected by COVID, but how we're responding to it and where we live and our zip codes has led to the outcomes being drastically different. So as we come back now to the idea of proteomics, how can we ensure that in this field that we're all so passionate about, because, you know, genes are great, but proteins are the reality. And I think everyone will endorse that statement here. How do we ensure that when we get a HUPO in the future, that we walk into the lobby and it's really a reflection of the entire world population? I was personally disappointed the last HUPO meeting I went to in Australia. I think I saw 3 people that looked like me. And of those 3 people, one of the people was one of the servers. And I'd argue that if we want to do the best possible science, we need to have everyone around the table. We need to ensure that everyone feels that their contributions can be made. And I think in that way, we can make a real difference and really push things forward. I'm looking forward to the dialogue and conversations. And I'm just honored to be on this panel with Dr. Chen, Dr. Robinson, and thank you, Emily.
Well, thank you so much for that introductory talk. Always love to see some stats to back up some of the statements that we're making. Yeah, without further ado now, I would like to say to everyone who's in attendance that we will gladly start taking questions. I would like to note it's up to you whether you would like to turn your camera on or type into the chat box. We are, however, recording this session, so if you would prefer your face not be a part of the recording, by all means, you can keep your camera off and simply either turn on your microphone or type in the chat box. Now, to get us started, I noticed there was a little bit of a theme among some of those first three introductory talks that I would like to perhaps expand on a little bit. And that's really the idea of different lived experiences amongst different demographics, whether it's racially different demographics or socioeconomically different demographics. How do you, our three panelists or members of the audience, feel that the people in charge or the people making these decisions can be more aware and maybe perhaps take into more consideration the lived experiences that they may not know firsthand how those experiences feel like, how they affect the individual's family and community, and how they can take these lived experiences and perhaps create healthier work environments or environments where individuals can be more productive in their work.
So I can just get us started with, I think, you know, one of the first things that we have to do, that we do in our daily lives as scientists, is we get educated. And we're the quirky people that love education and knowledge. And we just go after it, you know, gung ho when we find something that we're really interested in. And I think in order to really understand someone's experiences, we have to be educated on them. And that doesn't just come from seeking out one individual to learn how their experiences can generalize an entire subpopulation, but I think it has to start with at least one conversation that leads to a book, or that leads to a blog, or that leads to another conversation with other individuals, in order to really capture the essence of what different individuals' experiences can be. And I think for anyone, including myself, who doesn't have a clear understanding of different individuals' lived experiences, it has to start with being educated. And so I think being humble about that process and actually taking action in that first step is really critical, because once you have some level of understanding of what someone's experiences are, it can then help inform how you need to change your environment in order to better support different individuals. And I think this is something that I'm continuously learning how to do, but have learned to do some even in my own lab. And that has been, you know, really trying to connect with the people in my groups and understand, you know, not only the physical location of where they're coming from, but where are they coming from? What motivates them to be in the lab? How are their families doing? What are their family compositions like? You know, any of the things that they feel comfortable sharing, because then that helps me to take moments to recognize, okay, this is a tough time, maybe not for this set of people in my group, but for another set of people in my group, you know, there's some things that are happening in the world that are really impacting them right now. So how can we do things a little bit different? So I think education is the first place to start, would be my suggestion.
Thank you. I completely agree. And sort of on that topic of education, I mean, naturally, a lot of back and forth take place online, on social media, especially Twitter. How would you say, let's say, how much of the onus or the responsibility should, say, an institution take on for helping educate their faculty members, and how much responsibility should it lie on the individual to help educate themselves on their own time? Or what frameworks could be put in place to perhaps help out with this?
Maybe I can comment on this part. I fully agree the comment made by Renette. I think education is very, very important. And so especially for Asia, we were taught to be shy, to be listened, but we never like to talk. So this is a huge difference in terms of the culture difference. So when I teach, the student now, I always tell my student, try to speak as much as you can. Don't be scared that you may ask the wrong question or stupid question. So I think this is important for the education. But in terms of the reality, I think it's important to educate our administrator. For example, when I become the directors of my institute, I realized the percentage of the female faculty is pretty low. So we try to have a consensus with my faculties in the institute that as long as we have any interview for the female applicant, we will invite the female applicant to the institute. We want to give the opportunity better to the minority, including our rare population or the female faculty. And I think this is a very useful strategy to promote the diversity. Another example is when we organize the HUPO Congress. Every time the committee, it will always remind, oh, do we have sufficient speaker from Asia? Do we have sufficient speaker from the female scientists? So I think this is a very important strategy that we must have certain percentage of the minorities or diversity in any organization. So that can be very useful to promote the diversity.
Thank you. I completely agree. So Mathieu has his hand raised, and we also have a couple questions in the chat. So I'll start with Mathieu before we get to the chat questions. Did you have anything to add?
I was just going to highlight the questions in the chat if you need help with that, but go ahead.
Okay. In that case, we'll jump right into the chat box questions. So the first is from Justina Fairbober. So her question is, how to not only build, but manage the diversity in the workplace and beyond?
Yeah, I think I'll take a stab at that one. Thank you for the question, Justina. I think the two responses help build the answer to that. What I'm hearing, and I think I resonate quite closely with, is the idea of education, which is essentially curiosity. So we need to have curiosity in other people, like be interested, like we're interested in science, and then also humility. We don't know everything, and as scientists, if we don't have that humility, we make a lot more mistakes in the experimental design. So also when we think about our interactions with others, we should approach it with curiosity and humility, and in that way we can learn what makes people happy, and that probably makes your lab a better lab if you can figure out what motivates someone to do better science, and also what things people don't like. Some people don't like being micromanaged. Other people tell me exactly what you need from me. So in these little ways, and understanding the people we're around, we actually learn the humanity of other people around us. And I think those are the small steps in our individual day-to-day within the lab and within our society of HUPO that I think we should all be taking in terms of managing diversity. Because it's not necessarily managing diversity, it's managing our interactions with other humans. So if we take a step back and realize that everyone's a human, and everyone has wants and desires, and then really trying to take this idea of personalized medicine, let's take it to personalized connections with people, I think we can overcome a lot of it. Because the one experience I think that have impacted me more than anything else is when I was an undergraduate, I spent a summer in Thailand, and I worked in a protein crystallization lab. That turned me on to proteins, number one. And two, that opened my mind to the rest of the world, how science is done in other parts of the world. And so as much as possible, if we can have interactions with researchers from other countries, from other labs, and just try to learn as much as possible, I think that's how we can really begin to not only manage diversity, but embrace diversity, and embrace diversity for the world. And I'll stop with one last comment. We were able to develop a COVID vaccine in record time, which is amazing. That shows science is working in one way. But on the flip side, we haven't found the humanity in each other to be able to share that vaccine in a sufficient way. And that's the saddest implication of where we are, where we have the scientific know-how, to develop a vaccine in less than 9 months that's extremely effective, fast as ever, but we can't share it with all the countries who need it. That's a lack of humanity. And that's the same lack of humanity we need to address in our labs and our research society and the greater society.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think part of what has to happen are layers of built-in accountability within our institutions and our different scientific enterprises in order to make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion are being managed well. So, you know, a lot of the work that many of us do in this space is not credited appropriately. It's not viewed as important or significant enough. It's just kind of the thing that you do on the side. And it's not recognized. Like, there's a lot of this thing that many of us do on the side. And it really should become a central part of what we do. I was trying to recall the institution, and I don't want to misquote it, but it was either, I think it was in Illinois, who just recently changed their tenure and promotion process to accommodate real statements that have to do with one's work in diversity, equity, inclusion as a part of the tenure and promotion process. So I think within a scientific, you know, whether it's an academic institution, a company, the government space, whatever it is, there have to be just many layers built in of accountability to make sure that people within an individual lab to the entire institution are actually doing their part to ensure that they're managing diversity well. So yeah, so I can't share, you know, details of what that looks like in each place, but I think, you know, starting with simple annual reviews and making sure that that's a clear thing that's being recognized and giving credit and making it you know, a thing in the culture that this is going to be taken seriously is something that might help incentivize some individuals who are not already doing so.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about pushing to make this the norm across various workplaces, whether it's academic or industry. So we have another question from Ed in the chat, and the question is, what do the panel, or what does the panel think that HUPO can do to improve the situation? I guess HUPO as an organization, and whether or not the organization is currently doing enough.
I think this is a very great question that is also my job. Well, I just started my job this January, and I noticed that the diversity is not as good as I expected. So, for example, a lot of committee are mostly from the similar regions like Europe or North America, and I think so. But I think this is HUPO is an international platform that can promote the collaborations. And let me show you. Let me take a disease as one example. Even we have the same disease type like cancer, but the different population may have the different phenotype. So if you want to understand in a better way about the molecular level of the disease, it's very important to look at the same disease from the different population and the different cohort. So I think this is the one example that if we are able to promote the international collaboration and networking to look at our research like disease, I think this can much enhance our understanding for the different diseases. So promoting the collaborations under the HUPO platform is something we hope to promote. And I also want to propose that networking is important. I really like the activity from ECR, even much better than our senior groups. So, well, so I hope that this is a platform that we are able to promote more networking in the young generation. As Renee also comment and Rob also comment, education is important. So the change of the mindset should start as early as possible. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to have more networking from the different young researchers in the different regions. So whether ECR can think about any crazy idea, we also we welcome any crazy ideas. And I think Rob has a lot of crazy ideas, and we welcome and to further discuss in the futures. And finally, I also want to comment that for HUPO, we have limited resources. So we really hope to have more volunteers to promote the diversity, to promote more activities for this community. Thank you.
So I'm wondering, Dr. Chen, if to that point, it's possible for HUPO to coordinate some efforts that we can all go to our different government entities to look for new or creating new funding mechanisms that would support integrating science, especially what we do as proteomics folks, across the globe for different diseases, right? So without having, all the resources to do that, I think that would be something that we can make a big push on. And I think there was a little bit of effort around that just within like the mass spec community towards the COVID-19 vaccine support. But I think it could be done in a really big way. And as Dr. Rivers was talking earlier, I was thinking I would love to go to Thailand or somewhere else and see how proteomics is done. So can HUPO help support some faculty or student exchanges, right? Even if they're for a summer or for a couple of weeks, just allow us to really grow in our expertise of different techniques and approaches. So I think that would be another idea that I'll throw out there.
Yes, I think these are great ideas. And I really like this idea. So I think maybe we can go back to check all the possibility. And we have few committees like outreach committee. And this is something that we can do in the future. And from Asia, I do see the possibility of the integrated thematic program. For example, recently in China, there's a precision medicine program. So that funding allowed the grant to go to other countries. And Professor Fu Chu-he is promoting this program under the HUPO. So I think this is a lot of possibilities. And we may also have a linking with the UPA or HUPO, the regional societies. And we may say which volunteers groups can welcome internships in Thailand, Taiwan, China, or Germany, Australia, etc. So I think this can be open opportunities for everyone who are interested for this kind of exchange. Thank you very much for the suggestion. It's wonderful.
Yeah, this is great. I think that actually answered the next question in the chat box, which was whether or not HUPO had any initiatives to help connect early career researchers, students with collaborators for projects around the world. So I'll move on to the next question from Amber. And Amber, would you like to turn on your microphone to ask your question?
Sure. Oops, sorry. I was trying to paste all my ideas into the chat before you guys had to switch over to me. But hi, everybody. I'm Amber Harold. I'm one of the organizers of MSACL, which is Mass Spectrometry and Advances in the Clinical Lab. And I'm also a founding board member of FEMS, which is Females in Mass Spectrometry. This is, this diversity is something that I've been giving a lot of thought to recently, and unfortunately, only recently. It wasn't something that was on the forefront of my mind until a few years ago when we ended up having our European meeting had an all-male panel of speakers, all men, not a single female. And I did not notice until we had all of their photographs up next to each other when it was too late to change the programming. We were at our print deadline and everything. So we ended up getting one female on, but I feel like, okay, I've been there. I see how this happens behind the scenes and how it can happen, even though it's something that so many people are aware of. And I feel like one of the biggest issues is that a lot of the people who are involved in organizing conferences and panels they're working in silos. You've got small teams who are organizing individual sessions. They don't see what the other teams are doing. Maybe there's one or two people in the organization who actually have an eyeball on everything, but we go to our European meeting, and a lot of times when I see the names of people, I don't know who they are. And they're, very foreign names to me, so I don't recognize the gender right away. So I just really don't realize until I see all the photographs, unless I do a lot of research to figure out who all these people are beforehand. So it's just, and then the speakers who are invited, they get an invitation and they don't know who the other speakers are that have been invited. So they'll accept, and unwittingly become involved in this all-male panel. So I keep trying to come up with solutions to this, but I keep coming back to this idea that to really address this in a quick way, there will be a tipping point someday. We've got lots of early and mid-career underrepresented scientists out there. I think there will be a tipping point, but to get it along, and in the meantime, I feel that there's going to have to be effort from those high-level speakers who are not underrepresented, because I think they're in the best position to actually force a change. So my idea is to, and as I talk to men in these positions, I tried to talk to them about this. So far I've gotten some pretty good responses, and I think I got it into the chat, is that, when you're invited for a talk, if you could just, the first thing is ask, have you had confirmations from a diverse set of speakers yet? And if not, what I'd really like to normalize is the idea of giving joint presentations. So you might be cisgendered white male speaker or whatever, and you might have colleagues who are underrepresented, people in your lab, whoever. If you could do a joint presentation, maybe you present half and they present the other half, then you have a way of still being that headline speaker. You're still on your topic, but you're introducing a colleague to the community, and creating more of a balance there. And the fact that you've invited this person to speak with you really shows how much you respect that person. I think it's a really vote of confidence for them as well. And it can be even an early career speaker. And then if maybe there's not enough time for the speaker to have a joint session, or maybe there's not enough money to send the person, in that case, it would be really great if, that invited speaker could recommend, like, not just say, oh, you don't have enough diversity on the panel, I'd like to recommend someone who I think would be a great fit for this. Because that's something that a lot of people don't do. They'll see that there's not enough diversity, and they'll just say, well, I don't want to be a part of this because there's not enough diversity. But that is really a disservice to the community, I feel. When you have an opportunity, you're the expert, and you have an opportunity to really highlight somebody who you think deserves to be highlighted. So there's just a lot of opportunities for people who are in those high speaking positions to affect change, and they are in the best position to actually do that within the community. That's my thought. I could be more eloquent about it, but I haven't slept in a week. I've been running a short course in the middle of the night for the last week, so I apologize if I'm not too clear about it. But I would love some feedback from everybody on that.
I think you made some amazing points, and Rob actually has his hand raised virtually. So I think he has a bit to add on to that.
Yeah, at Amber, I agree with what you're saying. And actually, for the Francis Collins NIH director came out in 2019 that he would no more manels. So if it's an all-male science panel, yeah, no. And actually, a group of Black scientists reached out to Francis Collins and said, oh yeah, what about no more WANLs, essentially all white panels? And he was like, he wasn't ready there yet. But I think it really comes down, we're proteomics people. It's top down and bottom up. So from the top down, if we're in positions of power that push the agenda, the Dr. Robinsons, the President Dr. Chen, who have the power, use those places of power to ensure that diversity is happening. Positions like you have, Amber, where you're putting together the courses, you have power to say, these are going to be the individual we invite. So we are not inviting the same labs and the same cast of characters. We don't need to have the same cast of characters every year. We may just have one of them, and they can rotate one of those. We know who we're talking about. We can have one of them per HUPO meeting or ASMS meeting, but they don't have to be all 5 of the same group of people from the same sets of labs, right? And the second thing, as young scientists, the highlight what Lindsay Pino said. So I don't want to steal her thunder. Maybe she can say what she says. So
steal it. Go for it.
No, Lindsay, go for it. Lindsay, she's on.
Yeah, I was just pointing out. Hello, I'm in my pajamas. I was just pointing out that I feel like a lot of times it's the younger generation that's really sticking their neck out. Like I am so proud of like the grad students that are out there right now. They are killing it because they see something, they say something, and they are not afraid to point out when these things are happening, and put them on blast. And I'm starting to see that the pressure in some of the organization committees I'm on, the pressure is working, and the pressure is forcing people to take their list of standard invited speakers, reimagine what that might look like. And I find that really cool because not only is it getting more diverse people up in front of these young generation scientists, it's showing them that they can do this as a career. Like there's people that look like them doing this. And also it's getting the science like, oh my God, like, like Dr. Rivers was saying, I'm so tired of seeing the exact same scientists give the exact same PowerPoint presentation. So getting interesting science out there is also nice. And then it gives me ideas like I should cite this person in my next paper. In my next review, I should highlight this work. And I'm not just going to write the same thing that 20 other people have written before me. So that was all I was pointing out, and then giving a shout out to Naomi, who already got that on Twitter, and she was killing it. Fems followed her up pretty quick, so that was nice. Thank you, Fems.
Thank you. I think Amber, you have your hand raised as well. And we also have one more really great question in the chat box that I would like to get to before the end of the session as well.
You can go to the chat question first.
Oh, are you sure? Okay. So this question is actually from a member of the Meteorology Atom Lab, Francesca Berry, who's a graduate student as well. And she's asked, if you identify as a minority in the field, how do you manage your internal dialogue that is constantly questioning whether you were hired, promoted, etc., to meet a quota or because you were qualified for the job? And how do you build and maintain your confidence that you were indeed hired due to your expertise or skill set?
I'd like to take a stab at that one. And I'll, start by just saying, baby, if you get in position and you get to get in position, you have to trust with all of everything that you have that you are in that position because you have the goods and you're qualified. And in the spaces that we sit in, you don't just get to be a graduate student in a program just to fill a quota. You have to meet some standards, and they're pretty high in order to get into that particular position. And I think the same carries all the way through to, higher positions, different types of companies, all the things. I think what's more important with our internal dialogue is not so much why we got into position, but what do we do when we're in position? So whether you got to a particular place because you're meeting a quota or you got into a particular place because you have the goods, none of that matters once you're in position. What are you going to do with it? Right. And so I think that's the internal dialogue that, we should be having with ourselves. And that's the one that I always have with myself is, okay, what more can I do? Right. If I'm growing and I'm getting into these positions that Dr. Rivers pointed out, can I do more? What should I be doing? What more should I be doing? Okay, let me step it up, regardless of whether or not I feel like I'm validated to be here or not. The point is I'm here. And if I don't speak up and do what I can in my own sphere, how can we help move things forward? There have to be more of us that are doing that. And so if you're a minority by any meaning of the word, in any position that you're in, focus more on what you can do with that, as opposed to why you're there. You're there because you belong. You're there because you have goods and things that you can do that are very powerful in those positions.
I also want to share the experience about this very important point. I think everyone is unique. And when you get a position, that means you are qualified and you have learned to love yourself. And I guess many scientists like us are very, very critical in many, many parts, including to ourselves. So we always feel that, oh, we are not good enough. Oh, I should get a better papers, or I should do a better job in this and that. And sometimes that is good to push us to do better. As a minority, I think sometimes we just have to work hard to demonstrate that we are good enough. We are better than other population or other diversity, etc. But on the other hand, I think it's very important to really have the appreciation to ourselves. And once you get a position, you just need to demonstrate that you are fully qualified for this position. Sometimes this takes a lot of effort. You have to be probably more hardworking than many others. And we have to learn to balance in many jobs. So, but I think we can manage it. But I just want to tell all the young generation, we have to learn to love ourselves. Especially, I want to encourage the young generation in Asia. Sometimes people do not have high expectation for female in Asia because they expect that, well, we are mild and we are good in family, but they are not sure whether we are good in the career. So if you look at the distribution of the female and male students in the undergraduate, it's more even. But when you get to higher level, it's less and less. And so I think this is something that we have to really change. And for HUPO, I think we already noticed that this is very important. So when we organize the meeting, we always invite representative from the ECR, the young generation. So Ruth is the representative from ECR. She makes a lot of very nice suggestions, and she's kind of a driver to suggest the speaker from the different region, different topics. So I think the world is changed. It's not like 20 years ago when I joined the international conference in Japan. And I think there are 30 speakers. I'm the only female. I was shocked and feel uncomfortable. Everybody was smoking, but the whole world is changed now. And I also see the appreciation for the minority, at least in my countries. So we have high respect for any minority, including gender, including age, including the race. So I think Taiwan is not the only one to change, but we can do more to promote the diversity in the future.
Well, thank you very much. Those were all very insightful words. I think, yeah, to sort of piggyback onto stuff that Dr. Robinson had said with regards to addressing that internal monologue of whether or not I'm here because of my education, my educational background, or whether or not I'm filling a quota. It really starts with yourself and gaining some self-confidence and trusting that, you're here. It's time to make the most of it, show the world, the institution that you're in, what you're capable of doing and what you can do for them, for your community if you're a minority, how to be a role model for the generation that comes after you. I think those are all fantastic points. So we're actually just about at the end of our session. It's almost 8 p.m. In Ottawa. Or were there any final questions from the audience to sneak in at the last moment, or any final words from our panelists?
I would still have one thing to offer, if you don't mind.
Please.
So what Lindsay had said about the see something, say something, I think that's been fantastic to raise awareness really quickly. However, I'd like to offer an alternate idea for when you see, an all male panel come up or something like that. I find that when you get on Twitter and there's this sort of call out pile-on culture, it can get not so kind and pleasant. And I feel like these people who are organizing these panels, they're doing this for the community and they're trying to be helpful to the community. And I think having some compassion and being on their team to try and help them fix it rather than just, vilifying them or whatever it sounds like on Twitter is a more helpful path. So just like contacting them directly and saying, hey, I noticed this, not sure if you recognize this. And here's some ideas that you might want to employ to help. I found really good responses with that. I contact people when I see that. But just something to offer, an idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think, yeah, the culture around the way that people communicate across social media and in the ways that it can be very blunt, rude a lot of the time. I don't know about anyone else. I am very much looking forward to perhaps some social studies publications or some studies about how communication online has changed over the last 10 to 5 years, But I think that's an excellent point, reaching out to people directly where you can have a dialogue just between either you and an individual or you and whoever is running the social media accounts or email accounts for an organization is definitely a healthy way and perhaps even less intimidating way of addressing a subject, especially one such as promoting diversity and ensuring there's diversity in various activities or conferences, let's say. With that, however, that brings us to the end for this evening or this morning for some of you. I would like to give a very big thank you, not just to our 3 panelists, but to everyone that participated in the discussion today. I think this is definitely what we were hoping for, getting a dialogue started and sharing ideas, bouncing ideas off one another. This has truly been a fantastic inaugural panel. So I can only clap, and it's not that exciting, but it's truly not just for our panelists, but it's for everyone here in attendance.
Hi, Justina here at the representative of ECR from HUPO. I will just would like to say and encourage everyone. We are here, yes, we are here at HUPO. You can find us. If you would like to reach to us, we definitely are welcoming, any feedback and any networking. We are open, and we'll be really happy, really happy to carry this subject a little bit further into the action, not only, talking, but really make it from this really powerful discussion.
Thank you.
And there's always space to join ECR and join the exciting group of people pushing things. That's the plug.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, I would also like to give a little bit of a shout out to all that you should keep an eye out for the next panel discussion. Details for that will be coming out relatively shortly. It should be taking place in July. Be aware also for a manuscript competition that's going to be advertised shortly. If you follow us on Twitter, which you should, just at HUPO.org, very easy to find. Yeah, details for that will be coming out. So yeah, keep an eye out. A lot of exciting activities for everyone here to participate in, should they choose. And we sincerely hope to see you next time at our next panel. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.